Hey guys, welcome to Music Industry Magic, the show where I interview music industry pros to find out how you can achieve the success you want in your music career. Hey guys, welcome to the third episode of the Music Industry Magic podcast. Today on the show we've got Jayson Evans, music marketer and author of the 4D Songwriter. Really excited about this episode, I think you'll enjoy it. Hey Jayson, thanks for coming on the show. To get us started, just tell us a bit about how you kind of got into the music industry and what got you started in this career.
Thanks so much for having me. So I've been in the music industry, I guess, my entire life. I know a lot of people say that, but I haven't actually worked anywhere else other than the music industry for my entire life. So, I mean, that started when I was like 14. I started as a guitar tutor because one of my friends said, I want to learn how to play guitar. And I was like, cool, I'll tell you about my tutor. And he's like, no, I want you to teach me. I was like, yeah, okay. But I didn't realize that was like my first step into the music industry. And from there, I eventually became a songwriting coach. I did that for like 10 years. I worked with like 1,000 students or something, and that helped me buy a recording studio. I was in a band at the same time. We got signed to a label. I was touring, blah, 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 blah. I was always involved in the music industry, whether it be coaching, writing myself or helping other artists write or recording their releases. And what made me get to where I'm at now is because I was running the studio, I was doing that kind of thing, and I was in a band. We ended up getting off our label and doing an independent release. Then we broke up as a band after 8 years, and I started a new band. And I was like, you know what, I'm going to kind of do things differently. Instead of writing behind vague metaphors and trying to be clever or whatever, I was going through mental health issues. I'm like, I'm going to write an album about mental health. I'm going to tell everyone it's about mental health. I mean, this is nearly 10 years ago, and this is when people didn't really do that. So it was kind of a step out into the unknown. But we brought the album out, and we got like 10,000 downloads in the first week, and newspapers are picking us up, and radio and TV and stuff. It was crazy. And I remember thinking to myself, like, I wonder what I did so right here. I hadn't put two and two together. And about 2 months after the album came out, I got two separate messages from two separate people, completely unrelated, saying that my album literally saved their life. They were going through mental health stuff, and it was because of my album that they changed their mind from making a very drastic and tragic decision. And it was because of that I realized that their decision not being made was because I wrote some music of myself. I was like, you know what? Here's my choice. I either keep doing it my way and keep trying to push my music and help a relatively small amount of people in the world, or I can study this method and find out why it worked and why I was able to do this. And if I can make it even better, then I can teach other people to do it with their music. And they can help way more people. So I gave up music, I quit that altogether, and began my pursuit into studying marketing, sales psychology, behavioral economics, and their application to the music industry to see why I fluked a very small thing. And it turns out a lot of the world's biggest music artists are using these methods. So now I just help music artists get their music heard through these new ways in the new music industry. I'm not a music artist myself anymore, but it's because of that story that I've gotten to where I'm at today.
Yeah, awesome. So what does a day in the life of your job look like?
So, I mean, yeah, it's kind of crazy because as much as I might look like I have it together, I have no idea what I'm doing. I do. I have a lot of idea what I'm doing, but I feel like I have no idea what I'm doing. So more or less at the moment, my day consists of getting here to the office. I've just moved into an office. Now, if you got me like 3 weeks ago, I was still working in my garage. I used to work in what is now my daughter's room, but once she was born, I'll say I volunteered to go to the garage, but I don't think I have much choice. So I got moved to the garage, and I've worked there for about 2 years. So any of my old content up until now is recorded in my garage at my house, and I've just been blessed enough to be able to move to this new office space. To be able to move here is just a blessing in itself. But yeah, I mean, I get here to the office about 9, sometimes 10, depending on how much I work at home first. And then I sit down and I reply to about 3 hours worth of emails. So I have at least 100 emails a day to get back to, DMs, also Facebook Messenger conversations, comments, blah, 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 well over 100. What am I saying? It could be over 200, 300. And just from music artists reaching out, and I'm giving them as much advice as I can, checking out new music and helping people. And it was funny, actually, I do calls with people as well, where I just jump on a phone call and help them as much as I can. And I had a guy yesterday being like, why do you not charge for these, man? I'm like, yeah, I don't care about money. I care about genuinely helping people get their music out there. So if it's not writing to people, I'm creating extra content courses. I'm working on podcasts myself, working on I finished a book and now it's out into the world. It's selling well. I'm looking at starting the next book, which is I haven't really said much about that, but it's probably the most ambitious project I've ever undertaken. But fingers crossed it goes well. But more or less, it's just if it's not that, it's just I've got a bookshelf absolutely full of books that I read all the time, trying to find applications and ways that I can kind of twist it into the music marketing world. But the biggest thing I'm always working on in the biggest picture, it's like I've completely glossed over it and forgot to say it, but I'm actually the founder of Listen Pages, which is a music marketing software. So if I'm not doing all of that stuff, I'm working with my team on developing that and making that into the program it's going to be when it launches in about 2 months' time.
Yeah, awesome. So what does that software do?
Okay, so more or less when I've through my studies, I started to figure out that like people think in music that there's a separate like the obviously people know that you either have people who are fans of your music and people who aren't fans, and I think a lot of people see the industry as kind of binary like that. Like you either have no fan, like someone is either not a fan or they are a fan. Well, there's actually more to it. And there's more depth than that. So you can have someone who's not a fan and you can have someone who is a fan, but there is also that kind of gray area in the middle where they're like curious. They know a bit about you, but they don't know enough to become a fan, and they don't know not enough to not care about you. They're slightly curious, right? So I realized looking into it that there wasn't 2 stages, there was 3. There was cold, people who barely know anything about you. Then you've got curious people who are just finding out about you. And then you've got converted, which are your fans. And for the longest time, I thought, like what most people think, that fans are the end game. You want to get to fans, and that's the best stage. But then I started, along my studies, watching like Michael Jackson concerts and the Beatles and stuff. Like when they'd land in like a city, and there would just be like a sea of people that were screaming louder than the plane was when it landed. And like Michael Jackson at the start of his concert would just get up on stage and stand there and not even say anything, and people would be fainting and weeping and stuff. And I started to realize there was a 4th stage above that. Your true fans, like the people who are absolute diehard listeners, people who camp out overnight at the venues, that line up to be the front row at your concerts. And that's a whole nother level in itself, and like level of fandom in itself, right? So people start to think, to get to that level in itself of like complete cult listeners, like people who are just absolute crazy fans, people think that you need to just push your music upon them. And eventually, if you listen to an artist for the longest amount of time, you'll get to that cult stage. But that's just not true. I started to realize that you can have bands that you absolutely love and think are fantastic, and you're fans of them and stuff, but you're not going to line up outside the venue to get into their shows. You're not going to faint if you ever saw them in public. There's a different thing that gets someone to that level. And you might be able to transition people from cold to curious to converted through your music and your other stuff. But to get them to true fandom requires something else, and that's connection. People need to connect with you as an artist, to feel like they see a part of themselves in you, or that you've provided refuge for them. It's very similar to how cults actually run and how they become obsessed with their leaders and stuff. It's the same, but it happens in a different way with music. So my program, Listen Pages, the software that we've created, allows people to put their music out into the world instead of just finding out stuff like other platforms tell you, stuff like YouTube or Spotify or whatever else tell you, oh, you have X amount of listeners in this country. We don't just tell you that. We're able to work out the commitment level of those listeners, so you know whereabouts your most committed listeners are. So you can look at a world map and see that you have real diehard cult listeners on the other side of the world. So you know that you could go tour there and the shows would sell out, and you know that before you even get there, which has never been done in the music industry before. But it also allows you to see your audience, so you know what to provide to your audience. Because if you're trying to push your music upon people that aren't interested, people don't listen to music until they're in the curious stage. So if you have a cold audience and you're trying to push your music upon that, they're not going to listen. People aren't going to pay attention. They're not going to listen to you, okay? So you need to know how to convert those cold listeners to curious, and that's what Listen Pages allows you to do. If you can see your audience, you can see exactly where people are positioned in each stage, so you know what your main content strategy should be, so you know what to provide them to move those listeners to the next stage, if that makes sense. It's essentially turning a light on and allowing music artists to see their audience for the first time, but I like to call it mission control for global music domination. It's kind of like your mission control to see everything that's going on.
Yeah, that sounds like it'd be really useful to artists.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah. So what advice would you give to someone trying to make their music more popular?
I really think that it's difficult to give a one-size-fits-all answer, but I'm going to attempt to do just that. So I feel like the best advice I can give for any music artist, it doesn't matter if you're Swedish death metal or if you're a folk artist that plays, with harp and really pretty instruments, you need to be providing access points to your listen path, and the listen path being what Listen Pages is, that you can see your listen path, but everyone has one. It's getting people onto that journey to becoming toward a true fan. So the way that people step onto that listen path, onto your listen path, sorry, they come from different access points. So a lot of people think that the only way they can get people moving toward becoming a true fan is by pushing their music out, right? It makes sense. We're music artists, right? So we push our music out, people are going to listen to it, and then they therefore become interested or not, and they move toward becoming a true fan. It just doesn't work that way. And that's why so many music artists are struggling. They're trying so hard to get their music out there, but all they're doing is pushing their music through their music alone, which is a super one-dimensional mentality, and it is such a competitive space. All the music artists are doing that, So you're fighting against every other music artist out there in a world where people don't listen to music like that anymore. I mean, I'm getting old now. I remember when I used to be in a band, if you sent someone a song, ADSL2 was like broadband, but it wasn't like as fast as it is now. Sorry. So if you send someone a song, chances are, we didn't have mobile devices on Wi-Fi, so it was like they'd be sitting at their computer with computer speakers. So if you send them a song, they'd probably at least they're in a position to listen to it. If they didn't listen to it, it's because they didn't want to. Nowadays, it's like you send people a song, and like 70% or more of the traffic online is mobile, which means people don't have headphones plugged in. They're standing at the bus stop. They're like in doctors' waiting rooms. They're like on the lounge next to their partner or boyfriend or girlfriend or whatever, or parents. They don't want to be blasting a song of someone they don't know that has just told them to listen to it. So nobody's in a position these days to listen to music, and usually when they are, they just go for their favorite artist, right? So your goal is to try to to kind of steal listeners away from those big artists. And the way you do that is by providing access points to your listen path outside of your music altogether. So it's your personality, it's where you've come from, it's what you stand for, like what you want your music to bring to your listeners. It's the way you brand yourself, it's the way you position yourself, it's the lifestyle associated with your music. Like there is so many ways to get people listening to your music outside of your music that I really am trying to encourage music artists to pursue. And those that do pursue it are the ones that are contacting me in the 3 hours worth of emails that I get, being like, man, I can't believe that worked. But I'm scheduled on podcasts to discuss my motivation of what I want to bring to the world. I call your motivation what I just I refer to that as the change you want your music to bring to people's lives. So for example, with me, I wanted to help people with mental health issues. I could contact podcasts of people that discuss mental health, go on there, talk about it, and say, I'm a music artist who wrote an album about that. Therefore, you got people listening that are suffering from that align with your motivation. They're the most likely to grab onto what you're saying and become a true fan down the track, because you're building connection. You're not just saying, listen to my album. You're saying, here's the context of my album. This is what it's going to help you navigate. You're addressing the problem, not giving them a luxury, and the luxury comes later. And therefore, they become connected to you, and that's how you develop true fans who attach themselves for the future that you're bringing through your music. And that's the idea of the outside access points, rather than just being another music artist DMing someone saying, hey, if you got 5 seconds, check out my new single. There's no context around that, and there's no reason why they should want to listen to you.
Yeah, so it's like the music has a purpose.
Yeah, exactly.
Communicating that to people.
Yeah.
Yeah, awesome. So you've written a book already called The 4D Songwriter. What's that about? Can you give us some...
Well, The 4D Songwriter, it started as... not many people know this, but when I first started writing The 4D Songwriter, I actually thought it was going to be an ebook, like a short ebook, like 70 pages. And I thought it was going to be just answering questions that I get sent. I had a lot of frequently asked questions, so I thought I'd make it into an ebook. And I would have no real structure or form. It would just be questions, and I'd answer them, and it would be like a Q&A book. But then I started realizing that I was onto something bigger, and that's when I started figuring out stuff like the listen path model and all this. And it's like, and what are the elements that the world's biggest world's biggest music artists are using these elements, right? These elements to build their brand. What are these elements? How can music artists use them? And I started to realize I was just scratching the surface, and it turned into the 4D Songwriter are the 4 dimensions or pillars that I believe that music artists should be building themselves upon so that music isn't the only way they're promoting themselves. It's as I said before, it's like if you're promoting yourself through music, it's a it's a one-dimensional mentality, and I want to show them the other three dimensions they can be using to build themselves upon that. And so the 4D Songwriter dives deep into figuring that out. I brushed over them before, but all those access points essentially get explained in detail, and how to find it out, like how to find out your story, like what your motivation is, how to refine it, how to approach your branding, how to get it out there to the world, how to post it to social media, how to communicate with your listeners, and also how to find the people that will resonate with that. So it's essentially just a big guidebook from start to finish of how to not just find listeners, but find listeners that will resonate with what you have to say. Because I say this to people all the time, like, would you rather go out in front of 18,000 people in a stadium that could only like half care about you and like sort of could take or leave you? Or would you rather play in a room full of 1,000 people whose lives you have genuinely made an impact in? And these are the people who live and breathe your music and love you to death, right? If you're someone who would rather go out in front of 18,000 people that couldn't really care about you, then my book's not for you, because that's chasing vanity and fame. And that's all stuff that I don't agree with, because I don't feel like it's fulfilling. But if you're someone who's looking for that room full of people who are just like, you have impacted my life, my book is exactly what you're looking for, essentially, because it's talking about how to be your real, authentic self, how to get your story out into the world and what you stand for and your confidence, and then develop a following around that, if that makes sense.
Yeah. And then you also said you're writing a new book.
Yeah, right. Yeah, can't say too much about that at the moment, just because I'm trying to knuckle that down. But I will give you this little hint. I've actually told no one this before, so whoever's listening to this right now is actually going to get the first insight of what it's going to be. I haven't told no one. I've told a couple of people that are working on it, but essentially, let's just say it this way: if you were asked the question as a music artist, if you lost everything and all you had was your songs, you just woke up one day and you had the world had reset around you, everyone's normal, but you're not who you are, you've just got your songs and you're starting again from day zero, how would you rebuild yourself in the modern industry? And the hint comes from the fact that it's not just me answering it. There's a lot of people that are going to be answering it. So if you put two and two together, you can figure out what the book's going to be. But it's a big collaboration between a lot of people, and I really think it's going to be a great resource to get a lot of perspective on starting from scratch in today's industry.
Yeah, sounds like a very unique book.
Yeah.
So if you're helping someone with marketing their music and promoting it, what makes a successful artist in terms of that's like good to work with and that you can do a lot for them?
I think I get a lot of people message me each day and say, hey, can you work with me? Can you sign me or whatever? Or like, can you manage me or whatever? And like, I used to run a label back in the day, and I used to manage. I had a roster of like 5 bands that I used to manage. And the amount of time that takes out of your day is ridiculous. It's pretty much 24 hours a day that you're working with people, especially when you've got that many artists on. So for me to be able to like actually take artists on and manage them these days, I just don't have the time. I don't have time to do anything at the moment, let alone take one artist on, So if I work with artists one-on-one, it's usually, aside from the free calls I do where I just half an hour and I try to give as much value as I can, if someone actually said, I want to work with you on a release, it would depend on the KPIs, like what they're looking to get out of it. I mean, the best thing you can do as a music artist, if you want to work with anyone, not just me, but anyone, is actually sit down and work out what you want out of the relationship. As in the working relationship of like, all the results that you hope the relationship will bring. So if someone come to me and said, can you help me promote my new single? And I go, yeah, cool. What are the KPIs? And they say, what's a KPI? It's like, well, the key performance indicators stuff, like, instead of just saying I want to get more listeners, it's like, cool, but so if I worked with you and we got 10,000 listeners, are you going to be happy with that or disappointed with that? Because if you get 10,000 listeners, are you going to be disappointed that it's not 20,000, or are you going to be happy that it's double 5,000, which is what you hoped for? There's nothing to measure that on. And if you say it has to be 10,000, then we know that if we don't hit 10,000, then you could consider the campaign a failure. So then you know mentally what's required, and when you reach that both parties are happy. So I think there's a lot of music artists look for, I won't say a shortcut. Some music artists look for a shortcut, but most music artists are looking for the helping hand. So looking for someone to kind of guide them the right way to do stuff. And that's why I hear these stories like more often than I'd like to, of music artists that don't end up not donating. They may as well be, but they end up investing thousands and thousands of dollars into these like mastermind courses that don't teach them they teach them how to do things like Facebook ads, but they're not in a position to use Facebook ads yet. And I don't agree with using Facebook ads for music artists, especially not now. For most of them who are developing, it's down the track. And you need someone who knows what they're doing while they're doing it. From running Facebook ads, I can tell you they're very fickle. But people will learn how to use Facebook ads because they get taught it by some music industry guru, and they get charged thousands of dollars, right? Charge thousands of dollars to do these courses. And that's the naivety that causes them to lose their income and their investment. And these music industry gurus are just taking digital marketing courses and going find and replace in the document and changing everything from business to music artist, right? But thinking it compares, and it doesn't. So yeah, I feel like music artists look for that helping hand. And in order to get that helping hand from people, you have to know exactly what you want and to stay in control to do it. You're not going to find someone who can just click their fingers and you find all your dreams overnight, because even if they were able to do that, they can't read your mind. They don't know where you want to take that vision. So I make a point in the 40s Songwriter of talking about staying in control of your music journey, staying in control of who you are, what your vision is, so you know when it's being communicated well to the world, or if someone else is kind of taking it and making it theirs. I actually do calls quite often with people that say they go to a recording, they take their songs to a recording studio, the producer ends up taking over the songs and changing them and making them sound like the producer likes, and the music artist is like, well, it doesn't sound like my vision anymore. And that, although I'm talking that's specific about music, talking about it there, it's also comparable to branding and also your positioning and also your persona, like the way you represent yourself, that type of thing too. So you really have to stay in control of your vision, and the way to do that is by knowing exactly what you're looking for. So set realistic goals, reverse engineer them so you're able to work out what's required for you each day, and you won't need a manager or a record label or anything like that. When people say they want to work with me, I usually just say pick up a copy of my book, because I'm selling it for $3 at the moment. I don't make any money on them, but I want to help people with it, and that inside that book will save you having to spend thousands of dollars to work with a consultant or anything like that. Just go do what it says in the book, and it will be the best $3 you ever spent.
So me and my band currently, we're in the process of writing an album, and when we come to release that, we have like a few local fans, a few hundred followers, but not like a big audience to put it out to. So what would your advice be for doing that release well?
All right, so what you're going to first do is answer the question, why. I mean, if you're in a band, it works even better because you can kind of join on it. It's something that bands don't do, which is so underrated. And I would say to any band ever, it doesn't matter if people might say, oh, we're only just getting started, so we'll do it later. It's like, no, get it right in the beginning, because the longer you go, the harder it is to implement. But every band should sit down and discuss common core values and what they stand for as a unit, and find where you all align on the actual core thing that you want the music to bring. Now, I get it. I've been in bands. Saying that out loud, I'm like, that's a difficult conversation to have, because a lot of people were like, I don't want to talk about that stuff. I just want to play music. It's like, yeah, but if you want people to listen to it, you need to all know what you're actually working toward as a unit, right? So there's no point going out there if 3 members in the band are like, we stand for like militant veganism, and one guy's like, I'm the biggest carnivore on the planet, I just want to play music. It's like, you might not fit with the branding of that music, right? And therefore the audience won't align with what you're doing. Everything needs to be in synergy. Can you imagine that? It wouldn't work. Even if like the crowd found out there was one guy in the band who didn't align with it, they're going to be less inclined to connect with it. But if the band is like a shining beacon that they can relate to, and they all align that alignment brings a sense of comfort and trust for people, so they're going to naturally align with that. So you need to sit down as a band and decide, like, why are we writing music in the first place? What do we hope people get out of it? Like, in 5 years' time, how do we want our music to have changed the lives of people that have listened to it? Like, if we release new songs, like our new song that's coming out, like if we sat someone down and put the songs through our headphones, how do we want to have altered their emotions by the time they've finished it? Like, what will they have gotten out of it? If you can answer those questions, you start to know exactly what you know, exactly what you like, how to go about promoting it, or where those people might be. So if you can find out what you're bringing to the world, you then start thinking, well, who are the people that could benefit the most from getting this? So this is all very vague, because it can be anything from, I just want to make people feel happy, to mental health issues, to very specific motivations that seem like they affect a small amount of people. But the more you niche it down and refine it, the stronger the connection is, because these people are looking for people that understand them. And if you provide it, it just completely, separates you, because there's nothing else out there like you. So the the more refined you can get, people think that, well, if I refine myself too much and you get to a point where I'm ending homelessness as my motivation because I'm really moved by that, and maybe that you went through being homeless and you're like, I want to help people and homelessness and I want music to be a refuge for that, which sounds really unique, right? You think that you're going to ostracize all the people that aren't affected by that issue, but that's not true. You will still get all those people and they will respect you more because they see what you're doing for those that really need it. So the more you niche down, the better. But it can always start with something like, we just want people to feel happy. Well, then great. So where are people not feeling happy? Well, I don't know. And then you start answering where they might be. And that's where you start pitching your music to them. And when you pitch your music, you tell them that your music is exactly what they need for when they're feeling a certain way. This is how you steal from the biggest music artists. So for example, if your motivation is, we want people to feel like we want to pump people up and make them feel like they can take over the world, like in a physical way. Like I want to feel like physically, like they can take over physically dominant. And we go, cool. So when do people need that? Well, maybe when they go to the gym, right? If they go to the gym, they put music on at the gym, that works well. So they chuck their headphones on, they want to put on a playlist that pumps them up. Okay, cool. Well, so if you promote yourself as the band to listen to while you're at the gym, if you make sure to tell people when you release it, like we've made the ultimate gym playlist of our songs. This is like do a workout, and you could even pair a workout with it. There's like a video at the same time. Not you guys specifically, it's just an idea. But if you can bring stuff in that's outside the music, like we've worked with a fitness consultant and they've paired a workout to our music or whatever, you know that when that person's going to the gym and they open their phone and see Drake there, or they see this band that said, we are the gym playlist. If they'll go, oh, I'll give you a go because I'm here now and it's the perfect time to listen. And therefore you've stolen a listener off Drake. Do you know what I mean? Otherwise, he would have gotten that listener when they decided to listen. So it's about finding exactly where that opportune time is that you can provide the value that your music's going to bring, and then telling people till your throat has run out of voice that that's exactly where they should be listening to your music. And that's when they're going to connect with you, because they'll start associating you with a specific activity or routine in their life. And that's where repetition comes from, and people become obsessed.
Yeah, thank you, man. That's really helpful. Yeah. And I don't think many artists that I know are clear of that in themselves. I think a lot of people just kind of, they're just writing music because they enjoy writing music, but they haven't.
That's right. People do say that.
Figured out why. Yeah.
Yeah, but it's not because they haven't. It's not because they don't have a reason. You're right. It's because they haven't figured out why yet. So if they take time to sit down and go, hang on, I don't even know why I write music, and you start looking through your lyrics and you're like, oh my goodness, there's a lot of subconscious themes in here that are all tying into the one thing. And that's right. I guess I feel that way because I remember, these must have been life events of mine that have shaped me into who I am. And that's where you start finding your story and going, oh yeah, then it's up to you going, you are who you are, whether you like it or not. So you either kind of deny it or like pretend you're not and go living your life halfway here, halfway there, or you own who you are. And go, this is what I've been through. This is what's turned me into who I am now. And I'm here to help people to do this. And as soon as you can find that reason, you find your identity and you stick to it. I mean, from all my mental health issues, that's even just the tip of the iceberg. A couple of years later, I went through way more, and I didn't leave my house for 3 years, and I drank nothing but water for 6 years. I've got crazy. And that's, to me, is the most boring time of my life because I did nothing, right? Nothing really went on. But I bet you probably, and a lot of people why did you not leave your house? Tell me more about that. Even the most boring time of my life is kind of interesting because it's different from what other people are doing. And for a while, I kept trying to play that down of being almost acting as if it never happened. So because I thought it was like a blemish in my life. But now I'm no, I am who I am, whether I like it or not. So now I own it. I go, yeah, that's exactly what I went through. And that's why I'm here now, to help people do that. And it's because of me doing that, I'm able to build the audience I've built of music artists that listen to me and give me their time of day. But if I never did that and never owned who I was, people wouldn't have connected with me, because I bet the people that are connecting with me, this is a good point, they could either be going through the mental health stuff and look to me as an example of someone who has kind of navigated it, at least in a way, I guess, or they, this is what I'm saying about niching down. It doesn't mean that if you haven't been affected by, or if you aren't affected by mental health, that you can't connect with me, because those people are looking at what I'm doing going, wow, he's helping the people that have gone through mental health issues do this, and he's helping me too. So it's the same thing with bands. The more you niche down and find who you're there to help, you'll still get the peripheral people that are still huge fans of what you do, but you have to own who you are. There's no running from it. Life, you're given the life you're given and things shape you, but you have to own them, and it turns you into who you become. And as soon as you find that passion, it's so much easier because you just feel like you're not hiding anything. So you just can be completely authentically you, and things just flow so much better than trying to pretend to be someone you're not, or try to hide who you really are. I'll say it that way.
Yeah, so it's providing that value to people when they listen.
Yeah, That's exactly right. I mean, you got to think like what people write so much from the perspective of being a music artist. Like, I'm going to write this song because it sounds good, and they never think about why someone would listen to it. They normally just go, "Oh, because it sounds good," right? Like people will listen to it because it's a great sounding song. It's like, yeah, but how many great sounding songs are out there in the world? Like a lot. So you got a lot to compete with. And the bands, an artist, will usually say, but this is my one. And the only reason you feel that way is because you are you and you wrote the song. They're not you, so they don't feel that way. And it sucks to hear that at first, but it makes you just change your approach. So instead of thinking, what am I doing? Like, what am I doing what am I doing? What am I doing when I create this song? What am I doing when I write music? I'll say it that way, sorry. But you got to think about what could I do for the music, like for my listener? Like what can the listener hear? Think from their perspective, like why would they listen to my songs? And if you think of the objections, like, oh, they might find it difficult to listen to my song here, there, or there, then you know you don't promote your music in those times. You promote the times that they're able to listen, that kind of thing. It depends. It all changes on who your target fan is and how they act in their day-to-day life. But the only way you can know that is by going through your Instagram, Facebook, and look at your most targeted, like not targeted, most active, followers that are like liking and commenting everything, and check and see what they have in common, because that's starting to see the common threads between them, that if people like something, they might like your band too, and then you be where that something is. Do you know what I mean? Or at least leverage it to your advantage. If you find out that like most of the people that listen to your music really also like The Sopranos, then start implementing The Sopranos into your content somehow, or do a crossover or whatever, and then they're going to be like, oh, how do they know that? It's like they're reading my mind. I love The Sopranos and I love this band. But people don't do that. But it's because you've done the research on your audience to know exactly what they're looking for. You've seen bands do that before, where they brought out like covers of really weird artists or video game theme songs or whatever. It's because they know their audience, and they know that their audience is full of Call of Duty gamers. So they bring out a cover of like the Call of Duty Zombies theme or whatever, and people lose their mind in the fan base, and they go, I can't believe my favorite band is doing one of my favorite like video game songs or whatever. Connection level just skyrockets, right? And that's what you're trying to build. So it's about knowing your listener. And if you know your listener, you know what to provide to them and where to provide it.
How do you kind of find out who your audience are? Is it a process of trial and error, or are there steps you can kind of take to figure out what your audience are into better?
Yeah, well, everything's going to be trial and error. Like you've got to test things over and over again. It's kind of like using a metal detector. It's kind of like digging randomly and then using a metal detector. Don't know where I was going with that. Neither of it worked. It's more like gambling, but you just kind of try here and there to see. You can kind of make an educated guess, but you've still got to do a bit of digging by hand. That's maybe what I was getting to find out where they are. But yeah, as I said, it would be about finding, like looking at your most active listeners and your truest fans. Look to the people who are up the front when you're playing live, like not the people standing in the middle. Toward, if they're right on the barrier, if they're singing out words live, these are your most committed fans. So try to talk to them, get to know them, like talk to them after the show, which is a huge thing that a lot of music artists don't do. They just retire to the back green room or whatever and don't do anything. But if you go out, I made a point of doing that when I was in a band, because I talk about it in my book, but I went and saw one of my favorite bands and I met them, and they wanted to talk more about me than I could talk about them, which is like crazy. And at the time I was like, stop asking questions about me. I want to talk about you because I love you guys. But they were like, who cares about us? This is your country. Like, we want to find out more about you. And I've since then never been able to drop my level of fandom for them. Even though I haven't listened to them in like 5 years, I know that if they came to town, I'd go see them because they hit me with that connection. And so I started to try to do that. And I pretty much attribute any true fans that we landed as a group to that method, because like, if people come to your shows and hang off the barrier, they want to find out about you, and they would love you to give them just the slightest time of day. So go do it after your show. Just go talk to them. If every question they ask you, ask them two back about them. Don't let them talk about you. Just keep asking about them. Get to know them. And the more you find out, the more you ask people, the more you'll realize how fulfilling and fun it really is to be involved with people that really can vibe about your music like you do. Because people spend so long trying to find these true fans and then don't treat them with any respect while they're around. So go do things for them, hang out with them, like find out what they have in common. Like, you'll find the smallest thread that you just be like, that's really weird. We're at a pub and they all seem to drink the same beer. So what you do is next time you play that pub, just be like, hey, for the first 50 people that buy tickets, we're all going to shout you a whatever beer. And like, oh, how do they know that's my favorite drink? I'm definitely there, you know, but you've just found that thread. I'm just throwing examples out, but it can be anything, but use it to your advantage to build that connection around your group. And then you see groups like that, especially with like YouTube and like Twitch and stuff like that, like that. So things become memes because they find out their audience likes something and they mention it and the audience mentions it, and it becomes this one up till it becomes like a cyclone where they're talking about this one thing all the time. And suddenly, for some reason, the Carlton dance from the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air is something that everyone talks about when they think of your music, but that's what everyone bonds over in the group and stuff, and you just roll with it, and it becomes that connection. Just because you found out that everyone likes that dance, somehow it just becomes a meme within the group. And that's how people develop these unbreakable followings, especially when they build. Because if you hear everything I'm saying, it all comes back to connection. It's just about humans connecting with one another, which is what music is in its like at its absolute core. But most music artists seem to forget that when they actually they think about writing it and releasing it, but they seem to forget how to use the connection to their advantage, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it's about they forget that they're writing the music to try and impact people to
exactly.
Yeah, and then kind of to wrap up in kind of a short few sentences, what's like just any crucial piece of advice you'd want to give people, or a message or something you think people don't do enough?
Write without filters. So that's more specific advice for songwriting, but yeah, I would say writing without filters. Because if you, maybe that's on my mind because I put that up on Instagram today, but I think that's such a thing, because it's like, if you can write without filters, you'll communicate without filters. And if you show your scars to the world, that's where people are going to relate. People don't relate to perfection. So if you try to chase perfection, no one will relate. Too many music artists are chasing perfection. They're trying to come across as neat and tidy and iron out all their creases, sand off the rough edges. But the thing is, no one's going to relate to that because nobody's perfect. But if you come out and show your scars to the world, show them how broken you are in places, but show them how right you are in other places, and just be a real human, that's where you're going to have people that are like wanting to have stuff to do with you, because they can see personality within you. If they can't see themselves in you, they're not going to give you that chance. So write without filters, be authentically you, and show the world who you really are, and that's scars and all.
Awesome. Thank you for the interview, man. It's been really, really great.
Thanks so much for having me on.
Yeah, no worries.